Okay, thanks very much for joining us all here today. I'm Rick Wallace, a journalist from the Australian newspaper. I'll be your moderator today as we talk about this rather vexed and complex issue. And today we've got three speakers down to talk about it. We have Masako Suzuki Akeo, and she's one of the co-founders of Left Behind Parents Japan. We also have Takao Tanase, professor at Chuo University Law School, and finally Yuichi Mayama, a member of the House of Councilors and former newscaster. Now, each three are going to give a brief speech, and we're hoping to leave as much time for your questions as possible because I see it's a good turnout. So I'll pass over to our speakers, and we'll come back for questions. Thank you.
皆さんこんにちは。私は参議院議員の真山雄一と申します。
My name is Yuichi Mayama. I am a member of the House of Councilors.
今日はもちろん今ご紹介ありましたように、国際的に連れ去られた子どもたち、つまりハーグ条約のお話をここでさせていただくということです。
But I'd like to talk about the abducted kids, and of course I'm going to talk about the Hague Treaty and what's going on in Japan.
この条約には具体的にいろいろな問題点が指摘されております。こうした問題点についてはこちら一緒におりますお二人の方から後ほどお話をしていただきます。
Well, actually, in the process of ratifying this treaty, so there are many problems involved, and so these rest of the two people are going to go into the details, and I'm going to talk about the outline, the general matters.
私は現在参議院の法務委員会というところに所属しておりまして、もう間もなくですね、衆議院の方を通過してきたハーグ条約の本条約、それから実施条約の2つが間もなく参議院で審議が始まります。
So, well, the House of Councilors is ready to pass this bill of the ratification of this treaty, and after that, so we're going into the actual process. So it's about to become a reality.
でこの法律の審議の中での問題点というものと、それからこの法律がいつ頃どんな形で成立するかという話を私の方からさせていただきたいと思います。
And what I'm going to talk about mainly is when it is actually going to be passed and become a reality.
このハーグ条約は1980年に採択されてからもう33年経っているわけです。
Well, the Hague Treaty was created in 1980, so it was a long time ago.
現在89カ国がもうすでに参加しているというのに、日本はまだ依然として加盟をしていない、大変遅れています。
Even though already 89 countries have already ratified this convention, Japan has not done it yet, so it's been taking a very long time.
遅れている理由についてはこんなふうに言われております。一つは日本人の国際結婚の数がですね、1980年当時まだ少なくて、統計ではだいたい年間数千組と言われていましたが、近年一挙に増えまして、3万組から多い年は4万組ぐらいの国際結婚が出てきています。
Well, one of the reasons why Japan did not ratify this treaty, more than 30 years ago, was there were not many international marriages at the time. But just in recent years, the numbers skyrocketed, and now, well, as many as 30,000, sometimes around 40,000 international marriages will come into reality.
国際結婚が増えれば当然やはり、大変悲しいことなんですが、離婚の方も増えていまして、
the number of the marriage goes up, obviously the number of the divorce will go up as
2
well.
万組近い方が離婚されています。つま
Only
り
20,000 of
30% から40% ぐらい
marriages actually become failure and turn into divorce cases.
こういうことが一つと、そして、国際的にもですね、ハーグ条約を早く締結すべきであるという要望が海外からもありまして、ここへ来て日本もようやく重い腰を上げたっていう感じだったんじゃないでしょうか。
The other reason is that now we have been receiving what kind of pressure, and also many attempts have been made to make Japan to ratify this treaty. So that's also a reason why. So finally, our government has decided to ratify this convention.
私はこのハーグ条約を今回、成立させれば、成立する可能性は今限りなく 100% に近くなっておりますけれども、成立すればですね、日本にとって大変画期的な、国際的な条約ではないかというふうに思っています。
Well, now I would say it's almost 100%. We are almost certain that this convention is going to be ratified. And well, once it's ratified, this is going to be a great change, and that's going to be very meaningful. Well, for other country in the international community.
と言いますのは、やはりこのグローバル化で人、物、金、こうしたものがですね、国境を越えて移動している。国際結婚というのも増えているわけですから、これに対してその子どもの連れ去りということが起きているのに大変遅れている。これにようやく日本がですね、体制が追いついたというふうに言えるんではないかと思います。
I'm very glad that Japan is finally catching up with what's going on in the international community. So now the world is becoming smaller and smaller. So everything flows faster. So I'm very glad to know that we are finally catching up and make things consistent with other countries.
このハーグ条約の精神にも書かれていますけれども、私もやはり子どもの幸せ、福祉、これは大事なことだと思います。やはり離婚という悲しい出来事の中で子どものそうした幸せとか福祉が踏みにじられるようなことがあってはならないと思っています。
Well, I believe the basic idea and philosophy of Hague Treaty is very important in the sense that the rights of the child must be protected. Well, even though there are many divorce cases, that does not necessarily mean unhappiness of the child.
ただ残念なことに海外から子供を連れて日本に帰ってきた場合、なかなかその元の国へ返さないという状況があるために、これまで海外の国の方々からはですね、日本は拉致司法国家というちょっと厳しい言葉で、名指しで呼ばれているのを私は大変残念に思っています。
But on the other hand, there's a very sad and unfortunate fact. Well, basically that's because once the child was taken into Japan, it's almost impossible to have the kids back, bring the kid back outside Japan. And also now, the other sad fact is, but now Japan is regarded as a country that has a pro-abduction judicial system. It's a very sad fact. Let me repeat again. This is just my translation. A pro-abduction judicial system. That's what we have in Japan.
ですから今回このハーグ条約が成立すればですね、こうしたことを皆さんから言われるようなことはもうなくなってほしいと、なくなるだろうというふうに期待しております。
So I'm sure and also I strongly hope that we are going to be receiving less and less strong opinions coming from other countries, and also we can maybe change the impression of our country in terms of the children's right.
ただ今日はここにいらっしゃる皆さんの多分興味の中に、じゃあハーグ条約を日本が締結しても本当にそれでは日本へ帰ってしまった子どもを取り戻せるんだろうかということと、もう一つはご存知かもしれませんが、日本は結婚している両親にとっては共同親権なんですが、離婚すると単独親権になるというその民法の規定がまだ残っています。
Well, I'm sure some of you still have this question. So after the ratification of this Hague Treaty, will we actually become able to have the kids back? And also, we have this problem that we have this domestic law that, well, when the parents are still married, so they have the joint custody system. But once they divorce, it moves on to the sole physical custody.
海外から日本へ、いわゆる連れ去られてきた子どもを本当に取り返せるのかということですが、この問題については、ハーグ条約のいわゆる中央当局と呼ばれる官庁があります。これは日本の場合は外務省になります。
Well, this Hague Convention has this headquarters called the Central Authority, and this is just like the Foreign Minister of Japan in terms of its function.
この外務省の中には現在ハーグ条約室という、準備室を作りまして、10人余りの 専門のスタッフなんですね。
And in the foreign ministry, we have a new department which takes care of the matters related to the Hague Convention, and we have as many as 10 staffs there.
まだ少ないですけれども、これから充実をして子どもを探すため、海外から要請を受けた場合、この中央当局の外務省が窓口になって子どもを探すという任務に当たることです。
So first, we are planning to increase the number of the staffs, and so we can be prepared to try to make an attempt to find kids and also help the parents to return the children once we receive orders from the central authority of the Hague Convention.
それから後ほど子どもを連れ去った原因の主な一つである DV というのがありますが、ドメスティックバイオレンスというのがありますが、それに絡んでですね、一つぜひ皆さんにこの点を留意しておいていただきたいのは、親権、つまり日本の家族制度、あるいは習慣とか文化というのを理解していただかなくてはならないところがある。やはり両親というよりは、離婚した場合、片方の親が親権を持つというのが古い伝統というふうになっておりまして、現在法律でもそういうことが定められています。
Well, actually, in Japan, we have this tradition that once the married couple divorces, only just one of the parents is supposed to inherit the child custody. And also, we have this problem of domestic violence, which often is brought up as one of the issues in the process of this kind of international divorce. And so it's very cultural and traditional that just one parent receives child custody, and it's also supported by the domestic law in Japan.
この辺りが大変今後ですね、このハーグ条約を実際に運用するにあたって、いろんな問題、難問が生じてくるところではないかというふうに思っていますけれども、こうしたことが起きた時のガイドライン、こうしたためのガイドラインを含めてですね、現在、検討がなされており、柔軟な対応ができるような努力を今続けています。
So now, of course, we are almost certain that this Hague Convention is about to be ratified, but at the same time, we have to work on the infrastructure inside the government, namely the domestic laws, because without the changes of domestic laws, we cannot really utilize this convention. So that's why now we are trying to create a new guideline, so we will become able to flexibly, work this convention.
こうした難しい点がありますけれども、私は立法府、国会で働く立場として、これからこのハーグ条約が実際に締結、発効をしたらですね、スムーズな法の運用ができるようなことでですね、さらに努力をしていきたい。そして子どもを不幸にして連れ去られた親、そしてそれは何よりも子どものためになることですから、立法府に働く者としてその点の問題の解決にぜひ積極的に取り組んでいきたいというふうに思っています。
Well, as a person who is involved in the legislation of this country, I'm going to do my best to make changes about domestic laws in Japan, and also I'm sure this is going to be helpful for the left behind kids and also the happiness of their children.
長くなりましたけれども、この現在審議をされているハーグ条約は、この国会で成立をしますと、あといつその発効させるかということなんですが、私が得ている情報では、中央当局である外務省、なるべく早く、とにかくもう日本は遅れてしまった、グローバルスタンダードを取り戻すためにもですね、なるべく早くということで、急いでおりますけれども、一番早い場合はなんとか年度内、今年度内、つまり来年の3月までには、なんとか発行させたいという強い意志を持っています。
So, hopefully, after the ratification of this treaty, it may take effect sometime, sometime within this fiscal year. And now the foreign ministry is doing its best to make it happen.
これは私が無理やりに外務省にいつまでにやるんだ、これやっぱり私は一刻も早くという気持ちがありまして、無理やり聞いた期限ですので、もしかするとこんなに早くはできないかもしれません。その場合はお許しいただきたいと思います。
Maybe it never happened so as early as what I've actually said, but I'm just because this is the deadline I actually squeezed out from foreign ministry, so I actually gave them some pressure to receive this answer. But however, I'm going to do my best to make it happen as soon as possible.
はい、私からは以上です。ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Well, I speak from, I'm a law professor, so especially I like to point out the particular problems inherent in the Japanese implementation law of these Hague Conventions. We certainly, of course, endorse the ratification of Hague Conventions, but if you look at the Japanese implementation law, it is very different from the world global standard, and we have a very grave concern that Japan may not enforce or implement the Hague Conventions at its face values. First of all, look at the materials that I gave to you. Look at the last page of page 5. This is the statistical analysis of America. And just look at the bottom line. Outcomes of applications. And so judicial order for return 25%, by consent 3%, and for other return 19%. So approximately 47% are children returned, and then only refusal is only 10%. That's kind of lower standard now. But we, sadly talk that this figure in Japan may be just, very few to return the children. And so why we have such concern? And so look at the Japanese implementation law. The first page is a Japanese, version, but the real common is Article 28 and Section 2. By the way, Article 28 corresponds with the Article 13b of Hague Conventions. The convention dictates that the children should be returned promptly, and then there are only very narrow exceptions for its not return. And then that narrow exceptions is written in Article 13b. But Japan interprets these narrow exceptions very broadly, and that the Japanese implementation law dictates the court to interpret 13b more or less discretionary to include the wide exceptions. That's what I will explain now. Okay? Look at the page 2. Okay? That's Article 28. I just translated it, and it says that the court shall not order the return of the child if the court finds one of the following causes. Okay? And then number 4 is the same as Convention Article 13b. Article 13b, again, look at the page 3. Just look at this. Article 13b, it says, if there is a grave risk that his or her return will expose a child to physical or psychological harm or otherwise place a child in an intolerable situation. It says grave risk. It would expose a child. Okay? But Japanese implementation law, section 2 dictates this way. Section 2 says, when the court determines the causes of section 1.4, this is the equivalent of Article 13b, the court shall consider the following facts and all other facts. And then there are three listed. First is the child may be exposed to a physical violence or other acts or words which have harmful effects to its body and soul. Hereafter called violence in vague sense is in a country of habitual residence. So, if you look at more carefully with American implementation law, which I also cited, I'm sorry it's a little bit legalistic, but it's very important. Please look at page 4. Okay? At the above is International Child Abduction Remedies Act. That's a federal law in the United States to implement the Hague Conventions. It says that the findings, the Congress makes the following findings, and the number 4 says that unless one of the narrow exceptions, it says narrow exceptions, and also this law says it's burden of proof. In the case of the action for the return of a child, the child has been wrongfully removed or retained. Okay? And then number 2 says, A, by clear and convincing evidence. It means that the party, the abductor, who opposes to return the child must bear the heavy burden of proof to prove that the narrow exceptions of the Hague Conventions. It means that the grave risk is endangered by returning the child. Okay? So have this in mind, and then look again, page 2. Okay? The particular part that I read, section 2, number 1, it says simply that child may, there is a likelihood, only likelihood, and not only physical violence, but other acts and words. So like verbal abuse is also included here. And also it says only harmful effects is enough. So it's very broad. And then the second, the respondent, this is usually, for example, the mother, may be exposed to violence, it's a domestic violence, which causes trauma to the child. Once the child. There is no exceptions in the Hague Convention like this or in the American implementation law. American implementation law only covers the child's danger. But here is a respondent's danger. And third, this is again very problematic. The fact that the petitioner or the respondent, only the respondent counts, the respondent encounters a difficulty in raising the child in a country of habitual residence. For example, if the mother has taken the child from the United States to live in Japan, and then the left behind husband in the United States may, criminally indict her, or criminal complaints, then she has a danger in the United States to be arrested. Then that number 3 applies to it. Okay? And also other difficulties. For example, that the mother has a difficulty, language barriers, and cannot find a good job in the United States, and no relatives or no friends in the United States. All these, difficulties are counted here as not returning the child, on the ground that the child may not live alone in the United States without the mother. So the mother's difficulties affects the child's welfare. So that's a theory, not to return the child to the United States. This is very broad and very exceptional in the world standard now. And so we have very serious concern that if this case, these kind of refusals are made by the respondent, the court may not return the child. So that's just briefly, just two more things. Hague Conventions is a really global standard which applies to the international abductions or in the international marriage. But the government, Japanese government, officially says that it has nothing to do with the domestic family law. So the domestic family law is preserved as it is. But international global standard and the domestic family law really contradict. And then the same judge applies the law, and also the same legislatures. This makes this implementation law. And so there is this serious discrepancies between international standard and the domestic standard. And then especially there are two domestic standards which really contradict with these international standards. One is that in Japan, the abductions is condoned. And the official comment on it is that since the parental abductions, which is called in the overseas, is only a dispute over the custody, and then Japanese judiciary does not do anything until it becomes the battle over the custody and brought up to the court. So the parental abductions between the spouses is not criminal. And the second is the sole custody systems. And because of this sole custody, the Japanese judiciaries only allows very limited contact between the left behind parent or the non-custodial parent and the child, because in the Japanese judiciaries, only the welfare of the mother who takes care of the child counts for the welfare of the child. And so the visitations or the contact between the non-custodial parent and the child is allowed only to the degree that the custodial parent allows. And so if the court reasons this way, if the court forces the custodial parent to grant or to fulfill the visitation obligations and it becomes unhappy, it really is detrimental to the welfare of the child. So that's a theory behind this very reluctance of the Japanese court to grant liberal visitations. And quite often, if the mother adamantly refuses to let the father see the child, and also the child says, no, I don't want to see the child, then that's the end of the story. No visitation to them. So that domestic standard is a baseline to interpret the Hague Conventions and then to implement the law. That's the real concern.
Thank you, Professor Tanase. And I'll pass over to Ms. Akeo.
My name is Masako Suzuki Akeo. I'm founder of Left Behind here in Japan. And so my member is now 145 members. And so most of the members are the international marriage and also the Japanese couple. And so I would like to say, for example, one French man came from Paris to Japan, and then so he tried to give his daughters as a present, and he visited his ex-wife's house and pushed the bell, and after 5 minutes and 6 police cars and 10 policemen came to them, and the 10 policemen were surrounded him, and so he couldn't see his daughter, and so also he couldn't give the present to him, and so this is like a Japanese current condition now, and I'm so worried about after Treaty the Hague Convention, and so also some lesbian parents, and that we can't because I have after the Treaty the Hague Convention, we will have a lot of the programs, because for example, also the Japanese father, he got the court order from Tokyo Family Court. He got the visitation and just only two hours per month, only two hours. And so then he met with his son, and so but the separated parent means his wife still they married, and so she phoned the police, and the police came to him, and so the police took the police station to him. It's no reason, and so just only he rushed to his son, and he didn't know what's going on, and then he and the policeman took the police station, and then policeman said, "Okay, go home," but he didn't do anything. And so he's still Japanese, but it's it's the foreigner that came to the Japan to see the children. I think, and maybe so they can see their own children. And also I'm worried about the school, and still it still marries on what is they have the custody. Then if one parent wants to get the personal information from the school, then school board will reject. And so the one parent cannot get the report card, and also they can go to the sports day. And this is a big problem. And also, one parent kind of, I don't want to say like abductor, and claim that domestic violence, the false one. Then, and police is hiding everything, the address, phone number, and so it means missing children. And then, so how can I find that? It's it's on the hill now is the Justice Ministry, and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Japanese mother took the children from the foreign country to Japan. But they said they will find. But it's the police. I don't think it's the police doesn't want to get involved. Then I think they can find own children. And also I'm worried about, and the Hague Convention also after 1 year, and the children cannot go back to the country, and maybe the child, I don't know, the 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, and they go to the school, and so it may be so that the kids will make a friend. Then after that, maybe the kid said, oh, no, I have a lot of friends. I wanted to go back to that country. And I think after treated Hague Convention, and I think as soon as possible, and I have to follow the other foreign country, the global system about the Hague Convention. And for example, when I was in Canada, and French mother, she's a French Canadian, and she took a daughter from Canada to France, and the mother and grandmother, they stayed in France, and Canadian police, RCMP, they visited the France, and the RCMP arrested the mother and the grandmother also. Then the daughter returned to Canada. And I think, and I don't know if Japan, the police, and they will do or not. And so I'm worried about this system, and also I would like to say to the DIET members. And so in my case also, and so my son abducted from Canada to Japan 10 years ago, and just only I got 2 times a visitation in 1 hour, and so I went to the Japanese consulate in Canada, and so and police in Japan, but they didn't do anything, and still is my son is missing, and also the Tokyo Family Court said I should pay the child support, and so this is a kind of horrible system, and so I hope Japanese domestic family law will be changed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll just move on to questions from the working press. The usual drill, just please state your name and affiliation. And given we've got little time and 3 speakers with pretty distinct experiences and skill sets of us, get you to direct your question to one person or another, rather than that sort of omnibus all 3. Who wants to start us off, please?
Hello, I'm Natalie Suzuki for Daily Beast. I have a question for Mayama Sensei. If Japan ratifies the Hague Convention, does it mean that Japan will de facto recognize joint custody? And I have a question for Tanase Sensei. Even if Japan ratifies the Hague Convention but does not take the necessary measures to implement it, will this be a meaningless gesture?
まさに実際にこのハーグ条約が発効するとですね、その辺は問題になるというふうに私も認識しているし、日本の政府もそういう認識を持っています。ですから実効ある法の運用ができるためにはですね、そこの部分は将来的には何らかの形で変えていかなければならないというような認識は持っておりますが、やはり日本の長い先ほど申し上げたように伝統とか家族のことがありますので、しばらくの間はちょっと難しいんではないかなというふうに思います。
Well, thank you very much for your question. Because we do recognize that the fact that even if this Hague Convention is ratified, so there are many things that we have to do to make changes in the domestic law to keep things consistent. And also, well, what I would like to say is that the Japanese government at least does recognize these problems. There are many things that we have to do. And also we have to take our very traditional view of the family system. And all these things must be changed, but it may take time. But what I can say now is that, well, it may take time, but the government recognizes the problem and something will be done, well, in reality.
ですから日本政府としてはしばらくの間は、海外の方にですね、そうしたことをしっかりとインフォメーションをするという体制を取っていくというふうなことを考えています。いや違います。今の制度ある。そうある。そういうな。
Well, now, what the Japanese government can do is, well, at least to let other countries know that we have these domestic problems that we have to work on, so we can gain understanding from other countries that it may take time, but we are working on making the changes.
しかしそのままではいけないということは認識しておりますので、その変えるという努力をこれから続けていくということになると思いますし、そのための効率的な動きもですね、やっていかなければならないと思います。
So that's why, what I can say at least is that we have no intention to just leave the situation as it is. Well, we are trying to make a change, and at least what I can do is to try to make changes from the perspective of legislation and law system.
それによって子どもの幸福、福祉というものが阻害されるんだったら、これはもう何としても避けなければいけないと思っています。
And in the way we do it, our primary focus is the happiness of the children.
Well, as I said that, under the current implementation law, I doubt very much that Japan would comply to the spirit of Hague Conventions, and also there is, and also the domestic family law is preserved. The government openly acknowledges that, and also Japan Bar Foundation says that Japan Bar Foundations supports the current family law practices. So under the family, so there is strong discrepancies between domestic law and the international standards, and that again affects negatively upon the good faith implementation of the Hague Conventions. But once the Hague Convention is ratified, and then people knows and they overseas the foreign countries recognize that Japan really does not comply with the Hague Conventions, there should be a lot of pressures or criticisms from the international communities. I hope that international pressures will change the Japanese implementing short law in future. And also, and I said it's a global standard, international standard, but domestically, there are also a lot of disaffections with the current Japanese family law practices. And I don't have time to really look into the histories of why that we had such a sole custody systems. But the sole custody systems was implemented many years ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago. And then the Japanese people, Japanese societies has changed dramatically. And also for the good of gender equalities, a lot of men really not participate in the domestic affairs, and then that really creates the kind of internal turbulences against this current Japanese family law practices. There are a lot of criticisms of each way, and so I hope eventually that really will change the Japanese system as a whole.
Thank you. Next question. Gentleman over here.
すみません、田島と言います。日本語で田島です。前ね、田島政治田島。日本語で言います。私はロシアの女性と結婚したのですが、いいですか？ロシアの女性と結婚したんですけども。子供をロシアに連れ去られました。その当時、子供は旅券がとっくの昔に失効してたんですけども、なぜかロシアに連れ去られました。
Okay, I am married with a Russian woman, and my kids are still in Russia. Well, actually, my kids were originally in Japan, living in Japan, and also their passports were expired. But somehow they were taken to Russia, and now they're still there.
子供はその奇跡的に日本に帰ることができたのですけれども、依然として連れ去り状態で私のところには現在いません。で
And also, well, miraculously, my kids are back in Japan. Well, that thing is the good thing, but they are still, well, segregated from me, and I'm not allowed or able to see my kids, even though they're in Japan.
何度も繰り返されてますけれども、日本の裁判所では、連れ去った者が親権を取るということを繰り返し判決で出てますので、私も連れ去られた、子供はもう二度と戻ってこないと、そういう状況の中で、ハーグ条約が日本で締結されるわけですけれども、本当にハーグ条約が機能するのかどうか、そこのところがすごく疑問に持ってます。
Well, I really wonder if Hague Convention will be really effective even if it gets ratified, because yes, like many people said many times, that we do not have a domestic laws as the infrastructure to implement the Hague Convention. And also what I'm concerned about is that there are so many cases in the Japanese law system that once the kids are abducted, they are not coming back. They're not coming back to me. There are so many cases, and which actually makes me feel very desperate.
私の知り合いの女性で、実はイギリスの男性と結婚した人が、夫によってイギリスに子供を連れ去られました。
And one of my acquaintances is a Japanese lady married with a British man, and her kid was, well, abducted, yes, taken to Britain.
でその後、イギリスはハーグ条約に入ってますので、子供は日本に帰ったのですけども、日本の裁判においては、その友達は、統合失調症という精神病のレッテルを貼られました。
And well, thankfully, since the British government has already ratified the Hague Convention, so the lady could have the kids back. But however, she cannot meet the kids just because the kids were supposed to have a certain mental problem. It could be wrong, maybe schizophrenia.
そのような状況の中で、まさに親権が、連れ去った夫によって奪われようとしています。これもハーグ条約がどうも機能してないように思うんですけども、どうなんでしょう。
And just because the child turned out to have such a medical problem, so the child custody is about to be taken by the father. So when I see this kind of situation, I don't really have the impression that the Hague Convention is working. So how do you feel about it?
Thank you. Now, you want to decide among yourselves who wants to address the question, or how would you like to do it? Please,
Let me answer.
今、条約がうまく運用されているかどうかというお話なので、私の方から一言言わせていただきます。
Okay, as you said, yes, Hague Convention is not very working between the countries that ratified this convention and Japan. So let me try to answer your question, respond to what you said.
子供を連れ去ってしまって会えないっていうのは海外国内というよりも日本のですね、今日本の中でも保護者が、片親の方が親権を持つというふうなことにこれまでずっとなってるんですね。ですからそこのところをこれから、 ハーグ条約が日本が実際にその成立させて発行していけば、その部分をなんとか改善していかなくてはならないというふうに思っていますが、先ほど私が申し上げたように、やはり日本の場合はまだそれがまさにハーグ条約を発行することによって画期的に変わらなければならないところだというふうに思っています。
Well, as you said, yes, it's not working completely. But at the same time, what I can say is that once the Hague Convention is ratified by Japanese government, maybe, well, the atmosphere in the international community or situation surrounding Japan will be changed, and probably this fact will bring us into a situation where we have to make changes inside the domestic laws. So that's why I think this ratification of Hague Convention by the Japanese government is still very meaningful, because this will be a milestone, and we will be more conscious of making such changes.
私も法律を作るその立法府にいてやっぱり一番心配しているのはそういう点です。そのあたりはぜひ努力をしてですね、グローバルスタンダード、やはり日本の大きな変換点になると思うので、努力をしていかなければならないと思います。
Well, this is going to be a great change for Japan for the better, and also as a person from the legislation side, yes, I'm very conscious of it. And again, so let me repeat. Well, Japan has a very traditionally has a sole custody system, and this is where maybe we have to make a change.
Thank you. We're running a little bit over time, and but we started a little bit late, mostly due to my tardiness. So we might conclude with one final question from Joel.
My name is Joel Jean from RTL France Broadcasting. Tanase-san, I have a question for you. I'm not so sure to understand this issue exactly, although I've been working on that for many years. On the other side, on the side of foreign parents who are in trouble with this issue. I remember one thing I heard a few years ago on this issue was the word ethnicity. And I was wondering if there is a credibility in believing that international law can be reviewed or changed or modified based on a, how can I say, sort of ethnicity concept. Local law that would be based on not judicial process but race or customs. Thank you.
I don't think that the Japanese judiciaries openly or even tacitly discriminates against the foreigners per se or against other races. That's more neutral, I think. The only problem is that the standard that Japan subscribes to is so different from the foreign standards. So foreigners would be really, shocked to find, the Japanese judiciary, so that they feel that they are discriminated. But that's different from discrimination, I understand.
Thank you very much, and thanks above all to our three panellists for their attendance today. If we could just give them a big hand for coming and answering our questions. Thank you very much.
間がもうすごくぐらい決まってるんですよ。
ポイントってちゃんと言ってる。
あの人に指名したいことは
そこまではっきり言ってくれたい。
三浦さん、1分1番で OK。
また例に。
はい。